Mate, we can literally talk about anything. So last week, well, which is this week, let's face it. We've cut this into 2 parts.
Yep, fantastic.
Thank you. But we were talking about new beginnings, and
We covered it. We covered a lot.
Covered a lot. We went business, life kind of things, all that realm. And I want to continue on that at least for a little bit of this episode, particularly like relationships side. Now, whether that's with girls or whether that's in regards to like business relationships or friendships as well. Have you had to cut off any relationships in starting Volley? Have you had to bring in new relationships? I know I've certainly got a whole plethora of new relationships thanks to what I do now.
Naturally, people come and go. I would say that like there have been people that have sort of come into it early that didn't really fit into the piece, and so there have been like a few difficult conversations, which I feel like is only natural with a company. I feel like the worst thing that you can possibly do if you do start to sense that things may not be aligned is to try to nip it at the butt and try to have the difficult conversation as soon as you possibly can, because the longer that you drag it on, the harder it gets to. I've been quite fortunate that these have more so been with advisors and the likes, where they haven't really been in my core team. Like I would say that we've set really high expectations for those that we do bring on, and that are in sort of our tribe, and like we set the same thing for advisors as well. But obviously you don't go through the same level of due diligence when you're taking these people on. But I'd say from a business perspective, like absolutely, like cutting relationships, with past sort of toxic bosses and things like that. Like I do have fantastic relationships with a number of them. Like some of my ex-bosses I would consider like quite good mates, and I'm catching up with one for lunch next Wednesday. Some maybe investors of our company as well. So like I've maintained good relationships with 90% of the people that I've ever worked with, but there are some that you do you tend to see hidden motives, and I guess like a lack of or somewhat different alignment in values and things like that. And I think that it's important not to ever let that like veer you away from your true course. It's one thing like I feel like I've grown up quite quickly is like not trying to please everyone. Trying to, I know who I am. Like I know where I want to get to, and I know how I want to get there. If I see, appealing potential fast routes now, like I'm much quicker to flag them. If I see people that are, maybe trying to cheat or skate their way through things to get, to the end result quicker, I'm a lot quicker to now cut them out instead of even entertaining them. I'm a lot quicker to, pick up people when they're talking shit or, making promises that they can't deliver on and things like that as well.
That sounds like it's very much in a business sense. Do you find that as well in a more kind of day-to-day sense, in a relationship sense as well? Like if you're talking to, a girl you're keen on and like setting boundaries. From my perspective, I've learnt so much over the last year, particularly a lot in regards to business, but a lot about myself, and just like setting boundaries is and it's such like a buzzword, like setting boundaries, but it's so important. And like I used to just like let people almost walk over me when I was a little bit younger, whereas like now it's like if someone's gonna start doing that, I'm just like, nah, you need to stop doing this.
It's good to have a bit of a backbone. Like I'm a big softie with girls. Like I fall in love quite easily. So
Same.
I'm either like all or nothing with them. So if there is someone that I do like and I'm quite keen on, like I do make it quite apparent. But
but I think you can do that while like not having them walk all over you.
Yeah, and so here's the thing: I've in the past probably been susceptible to letting people, I guess, like take me for a bit of a ride. Like girls, girls take me for a ride. In terms of red flags that you normally would pick up on, but you have those rosy glasses on, and you sort of look past it because you think, they could be this, like they could be great, like it could work out and we could be happily ever after. But a lot of the times, you sort of overlook the really strong signs that you're potentially not compatible or you're not made for one another, and I guess like drag on, which again, similar to the business sense, only fucking makes things worse when you delay the hard conversations.
I think you and I were talking about it in that like the game, this is particularly in regards to like relationships with girls and stuff. like the game is like you don't want to play the game, but you need to be able to like not be too obsessed.
Explain the game.
Well, like I mean, the game is just like let's say she replies, and then I give it 4 hours before I reply, and then she gives it 6 hours, and then I'm going to give it 8 hours until I reply.
Petty little games.
Petty shitty little games that get you nowhere. I've always had to like almost be careful, and like if I ever needed to play the game, like when I was younger, less confident and stuff, then like I had to like actively make sure I'd do it. Whereas like I know like people like girls I've spoken to in the past and stuff, like they're like the game is so like it's a sixth sense to them. Like it's so easy for them. Are you similar?
I am similar. Like don't get me wrong. Like I've definitely played those games before, but I would say like I've got a lot of chick mates that I've seen like firsthand of like blokes playing those same games with them. So I wouldn't say that it's a one-sided coin. I think that both blokes and girls can definitely play to them. But I was similar. Like now, like back in the day, maybe 2-3 years ago, like I was very much of like they did this, so I'm going to do this. But now, like if I one sense that I'm pretty quick to to cut it off, and I do have like a lot more foresight in anticipating like whether I see like a future with someone quite from early on. But if I ever get to a point where I'm playing games with them, it's probably a pretty good indicator that this girl's not meant for me. So I don't really get caught up in them these days, which is good.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like watching mates and acquaintances go into like relationships and stuff, or talking to a girl, and it's like you can just see so clearly from the outside looking in that these, like, bro, you're getting taken for a fucking ride. Like you are getting walked all over. Like and it's so clear from the outside looking in, but like when you're in it, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. You sort of, again, like you put the red flags aside because you see the best of that person. But I think that's where communication is always key. Like making sure that you're both on the same level, or if you're not, at least voicing that. So if someone's potentially like more interested than the other person as well, at least that's that's been established. But I think that communication's the main thing there, because a lot of the time when there is that potential discrepancy between how people treat one another in relationships, it's due to them having different understandings of where that relationship may currently be at.
So true. Relationships in regards to friendship and stuff, that's a big one that I've noticed in terms of new beginnings, is like introducing new people into my life, especially as like my social media grows, especially as like I'm building a brand in Sunday Run, and watching like these really cool individuals coming into my life is such an elite thing to look at from the outside looking in. I've noticed that like most of my conversations throughout the week, throughout the day, is like pretty high level stuff. Like it's stuff I've never done prior to this year. Have you noticed that when you started volley?
Definitely. And like I think like a little bit of imposter syndrome is inevitable to play into that. But I see imposter syndrome as a great thing, because it shows that you're doing things that are making you uncomfortable. It's doing things that you haven't potentially done before. It's showing that you're growing. Like growth is quite literally going from one place and then progressing to another. And if you're feeling imposter syndrome, that's only a testament to that you are growing in some capacity. So like I inevitably, I do feel that day, like literally every day, of like, oh, this is something I've never done before. Am I qualified? Like, you have that, the questions that you ask yourself. But at the end of the day, if you take a step back and you look about like, what you have achieved in the short period of time, and like, I feel like you can just, get past those, those ideas that you potentially have about yourself. Yeah,
I think imposter syndrome is a good thing. And it happens all the time for me, to be honest. But like I kind of look forward to it. I don't know, like the new beginnings thing. It's imposter syndrome is going to be so part of it, and like why wouldn't it be? Have you? I kind of already asked that, but like cutting people out of your life, have you had to do that from a friendship perspective?
No, I've been quite fortunate with all my mates. I would say I've got like a really good group of schoolmates. Like they'll be mates for life, basically. I was with a few of them up at Mount Buller like a few weeks ago. We're talking like our group chat's still firing from 7 years ago, which is awesome.
Really?
Yeah, like
that's elite.
It still pops off. So I've got two, Rat Pack and Snake Pick.
Shout out.
And then the other one is like my college mates. So I went to Queen's College at Melbourne Uni, and similarly to there, like just developed like another group of of friends they'll be my mates for life. So quite fortunate that haven't really had anyone come into my life from a friendship perspective that we've had to sort of part ways with. But yeah, what about you?
Nah, obviously.
Yeah, besides one.
It's pretty clear, actually. Other than that, no, there's no, I'm so much the same in terms of the group around me is so elite. I'm so fortunate from friends to family to relationship wise, just so lucky with everyone that is around me. And I'm so thankful every single day. If you go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you were starting volley, what do you think it would be? And sorry to throw you on the spot.
I like it. I'd say the main thing for me, and then I'm gonna not answer your question here, but the main thing for me of life is setting your priorities. And this is with everything you're doing, whether it's a business or whether it's you're setting yourself a fitness goal or you're wanting to run a marathon. It's setting your priorities, compromising on the things that aren't going to serve you for getting to that priority. And then 3, staying disciplined and repeating, that day in, day out, and working towards that incrementally. I would say when I was starting volley of just, stick at it, be prepared that everything's going to take longer than what you anticipated. Everything's going to be harder. Every conversation you're going to have to meet people, particularly when you're starting off. You could have a clothing company and you could have a t-shirt in your hand of your clothing company within 2 weeks. We're starting a tech company. It's been almost a year, and I still don't have a fully working application that I can sit down with a client in front of, or with a potential user, which is difficult because, for a year we've been selling this idea, this thing that didn't really exist. And it started off really, really hard because at the end of the day, we were selling them an idea that hadn't been validated. We had no real legs to stand on. We were just going in there. We're passionate. We're saying, hey, we're going to, commit our, I'm going to pour my heart into this. I'm going to commit to this with everything that I've got. Do you want to play a part in it? And we were quite fortunate that we had, some companies and some really high level individuals take quite kindly to what we were doing and took an interest in what we were doing, and they were happy to meet us, even if we had to do 90% of the work to get something across or something on paper. They were still happy to play ball. So, yeah, I'd say that would be my advice.
Where do you see volley in 5? Or where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Volley is very clear. So we're really ambitious with where we want to take this company. So a personal goal of mine has always been to, create a positive impact on 1 billion lives, which, seems quite unachievable. But I think I've always been motivated by, the big, scary, audacious goals. And I think of no better life purpose, if you would, than, trying to create a world that was better than what I entered it in. And, I think everyone should be trying to create a net positive on the world in whatever way they can, whether that be, within their friends and their local community, or whether that be in their company, or whether that be in their state or country. But for me, I'm hungry to, fix some of the big world problems. And I think that volley is an awesome tool to be able to do some of this. So for us, firstly with volley, I see volley in 5 years being being an app that sits in everyone's pocket. And I don't mean it by it's an app that sits in the back of the phone, but it's something that, is slowly integrated into people's daily lives. And it's not seen as, let's go onto this tech platform. It's just something that it becomes ingrained in people's lives of oh, Louis, what are you doing this weekend? Let's go volley down at this kid's fun run. Or, hey, I've got some time free this Thursday afternoon. I'm going to volley. So for where we want to take it in the next 5 years, I think is that, volley becomes something that, is, I guess, an evolution of the word volunteer, which is partly where the name came from. So it's
it's a good point.
Trying to reinvent the way that people perceive, volunteering or doing good, and for it to be not just understood, but deeply ingrained in people's lives. So I couldn't give you a number of how many users we want or how many people we want using the platform, but all I can tell you is we want this thing to be, global, and we're looking at ways that we can, expand into the US as soon as possible, expand throughout APAC. Super passionate about bringing this thing to the world. And if it was me, 5 years, I'd love to be in a happy relationship. I would say that it's probably too early for kids at 30 for me. I think I've still got a little bit to do by then, but the goal for me would be spending 3 months in Melbourne, 3 months in maybe Amsterdam or
nice.
or throughout maybe Berlin, all for work. Maybe 3 months in New York and 3 months in England, and then just rotating through there and just trying to spread, I guess, what we're looking to create across all these different continents. Yeah.
What's your perfect Saturday look like? Saturday morning when you're 30.
Saturday morning when I'm 30. That is a fucking hard question, isn't it?
Throwing him on the spot.
Saturday morning when I'm 30 would be waking up next to someone I love, I would say.
Yeah.
It would be going for a run with my good friend Louis.
Yes.
Ticking the Ks under the legs. I would say...
What time are we running?
As in pace or as in...
Nah, like what time we starting?
Time of the day.
AM.
I'm going to say an 8 a.m. run.
Yeah, nice.
I reckon we pull up. We'd probably go get, brunch we meet our partners and get brunch together.
Beautiful.
This is sounding pretty nice. Maybe at Dundas and Fostered or something like that.
Okay.
We meet there post run in the afternoon if it's summer, or even ideally we're not in Melbourne at this point. If it's summer, I'd say we're down the coast. I'm originally a country boy, so I grew up half an hour from the South Australian border, and then we moved just on the outskirts of Torquay when I was 10 or 9. So maybe down there, we're going for a run along the surf coast, having lunch together, maybe going out for a surf in the afternoon,
Ooh, nice.
catching up with mates, and then a few beers on the Saturday night. I think would be fantastic. So
live music kind of vibe.
Yeah, live music, Torquay, the pub down there actually goes off a bit. So yeah, it's good fun. But I don't know, I would say that the perfect mix for me would be on a wholesome Sunday complete would be with my mates, with someone that I love, staying active, being active, quite literally in terms of something that's running or, either running or gym, which is, directly beneficial to your health, that I wouldn't say is my favorite thing to do in the world, but it is quite important to me. And then doing an activity that I love, like surfing or, it's during winter, snowboarding.
It's a wholesome day.
Yeah, a wholesome day. And then, topping that off with a few beers with some mates in the afternoon.
But not too many beers that you've ruined on Sunday.
Nah, we still go for the Sunday run.
Yeah, the Sunday run, the back-to-back run.
Yeah, well, by the time we're 30, we probably have, reined it in a little bit, I would hope. So
fuck, you'd hope so. We don't go too hard now. Nah, we're all right.
We're pretty well behaved.
Yeah. What are you listening to many podcasts at the moment?
I'm a massive podcast nuffy. I've actually got a playlist on my Spotify. I think it's about 110 or 111 different podcasts at the moment. I would recommend, I can't recommend this highly enough, and it's, such an easy thing to do if you're looking at starting to level up in terms of your business or your personal life or your personal development, things like that, is start being selective with what you're listening to and what you're putting into your ears. This is obviously a great platform. I feel like we covered some, hopefully some interesting stuff across, part 1 and then this part 2. But on top of that, look for podcasts that are going to help improve you as a person. So for me, I'm very fond of Diary of the CEO by Stephen Bartlett.
I love him, yeah.
Very fond of Jay Shetty. Very fond of Frankie Lee. Very fond of Chris Williamson. I love Joe Rogan. And also Andrew Huberman's another one. But I'm really into listening to the podcasters when they're being interviewed, because you get to understand a unique perspective about the individuals as well. So I frequently will find someone that I like, for example, Andrew Huberman, and then I'll listen to him on Joe Rogan, then I'll listen to him on Chris Williamson, and then I'll listen to him on Diary of the CEO, and then Jay Shetty. And then a lot of the time you'll find, for me, they're my big four, that if someone is interesting, they'll jump across all of them. And then I feel I understand an extra,
nuance about them. Yeah.
Yeah, more than just scratch the surface with them. But yeah, they're sort of my main rotation at the moment.
Is this the second podcast you've ever been on?
So I actually went on one, funny story. I went on one late last year and I actually did 2 recordings of it and it never got published. So
oh, no.
Yeah, pretty brutal.
What was the point in that?
It was a guy who was a bit all talk, I would say. He was looking at doing a few too many things. He filmed a few episodes. I think he published one. And then, I don't know, just never eventuated. And I think that there's a statistic saying that, 90% of podcasts never make it past the 3rd episode. And then 99 never make it past the 20th. So
this is episode 20. Oh, I couldn't even tell you, 22.
So that means, Louis, you're in the top 1% of podcasters ever.
Let's go, baby. Come on. They might not be good podcasts, but we're in the top.
It doesn't matter. That's the thing. It's the same, going back to part 1, doesn't matter if your content's fantastic from day one. I know that listening to, Chris Williamson speak and Joe Rogan, they say like when they go back and listen to their episode number 1, they fucking cringe. And I think that that's like the same thing for, you know, hopefully like, you know, like 20, whatever this, episode 20, whatever. This has been, you know, good and, you know, informative, and there's been value that's been transitioned across. But the exciting thing is that like these are only going to get better as time goes on. Like you're going to get better as a host. Like the guests that you get on will be better than me.
Impossible.
The producer, you know, you continue to develop as well.
Well,
so
get rid of this producer. Sitting behind the camera, like what?
Nah. But like you know, everything just like levels up, and it's just like a matter of like, you know, constantly just getting those marginal gains, like episode by episode, piece of content by piece of content, like week by week. So I think that that's, you know, pretty consistent amongst all things as well.
The art of podcasting, it's an interesting one. Like it's pretty difficult. And I don't think people realize it until either they're on a podcast or like they are conducting an interview as such, because like everyone's listening. So you can't really have too much silence. Now, becoming a good podcaster is realizing that silence is actually good, and it's like it's okay to have breaks, and you know there's power in silence as well. But being able to conduct a conversation for a long period of time can be quite difficult, don't you reckon?
100%. I feel like for me, like it's a lot easier talking to you specifically because like we're obviously quite good mates. Like I know a lot about you, you know a lot about me. Like we chat shit every second morning when we go for a run together. It is difficult talking to another person for extended periods of time, but I feel like, you know, for me personally, when I've been on this, like you're very good at, you know, segueing the conversation and, you know, talking to things that you're confident that I'll have an opinion of. Other things that are, you know, being complementary to that have just been, you know, every day I'm on Zoom calls nonstop, and a lot of the time I'm quite honestly talking out my ass of like, you know, just pitching ideas that, you know, to again like quite people that are in quite high up positions, and you know, getting very adamant with that. But I feel like from a personal level, like my confidence for speaking to another person is, you know, just gone from 0 to 100 across like the last 12 months. And to be honest, it's just been, you know, repetitions of like, you know, I've spoken to a few conferences over the last year. You know, now I've done a few podcasts, which has been fantastic. But I remember like when I was starting that, like I was fucking shaking. Like at my first conference, I was literally up there, and my friends were filming me, and like I thought it was like I was so glad to get it done. I was sweating, like my hands were shaking, like similar to like the podcast that I did of the ones that never got published. Like he would ask me to introduce myself, and I'd choke on my words, like things like that. So it's again like there's a lot of water that's gone under the bridge between then and now, but it's just been a matter of fucking reps, man. Like it goes back to the priorities, the compromise, and the discipline of, you know, just staying at it and just trying to continuously improve yourself.
If you were to start a podcast, what would you do it on?
I would love to do it one day, and I think that like a lot of founders, you know, tend to go into that realm. I think that I would try to mimic like a Diary of the CEO from Stephen Bartlett. I think that, you know, the types of guests that he gets on are fascinating. He's very well spoken. He's genuinely interested in what people have to say as well. So like for me, like I'll just try to find individuals that I think are interesting. It wouldn't necessarily be, hey, this is a business podcast, this is a health podcast, this is a lifestyle podcast. So we're just trying to find individuals that are, you know, ideally excelling in a specific field, and then trying to understand like what motivates them, like what makes them passionate about this niche. Because I think that like typically with like high performers, you tend to find a lot of consistencies between them, but then you also find like your cool niches which make them as well. So yeah, that would definitely be, you know, another goal of mine potentially, like when, you know, volley, if I ever move on from volley in, you know, years and years and years, and, you know, keep up the conversations and the network that I'm able to build, would definitely be a start a podcast. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it would have a general theme. Like it would be skewed naturally to the things I'm interested in, whether that's business, whether that's health and fitness, whether that's, you know, sport, but it would more so just be having interesting conversations with interesting people.
We interrupt this episode to chat to you about some sponsors. Thank you so much to every sponsor of the show. Thanks so much to you guys for listening and supporting the show. It honestly helps us out a whole lot. First up, we have Brooks. You guys know I love Brooks. Brooks started with me early days. It was kind of just as my social media was picking up, and they spotted me in the market and said, Louis, we want you to wear our shoes. And I hadn't worn Brooks much before. They showed me the way. They showed me what a good pair of shoes feels like on the feet, and I want you to feel the same. So make sure you go and check out Brooks, pick anything up, and if you do so, send me a photo because I absolutely love their shoes. I'm currently running a lot in the Ghost 14s. They've got some elite colorways and you should really check them out. Next up, we have Before You Speak Coffee. Thank you to Before You Speak Coffee for getting on the podcast. You guys are legends. And it actually works out really well because I froth their product. Like, coffee is incredible, but coffee that tastes good is even better. They have these mocha sachets at the moment. I put them in a mug, bit of hot water, a dash of milk, and it tastes like the most elite mocha. It's like 15 calories or something, and I just kind of pump them throughout the day. Not going to lie, I'm on a calorie deficit at the moment, so a lot of caffeine is necessary. Please go and check out Before You Speak Coffee. Cheers. Let's get back to it. It's an interesting one that with podcasting, I found it's a really steep learning curve. I've learned how to hold a conversation and all of that. Editing, it's not too hard. Obviously, I've like offloaded that now, but
When you don't do it.
yeah, it's not hard. Yeah, exactly. But like the one of the hardest parts is like firstly the consistency, but also like getting appropriate guests on the show. And it's, I started Sunday Run with the mindset of it being a running podcast, but like how much can you talk about? Like, sure, I could get like marathon runners on. I've looked to getting more professional runners on, but in actual fact, after you've asked them 10 or so questions or the first 10 minutes, it's like, well, is there not like a whole lot more to talk about necessarily in regards to the actual running? So I really kind of wanted to build this podcast around like good to listen to while you're running. In fact, we don't have to be a community that is just so one-dimensional. Now, I do need to focus on my one wood and my craft, which is running and getting new people into running. But it's it's an interesting one. It's like it's quite difficult.
It's quite transposable, I think, of like hopefully what we've covered today, because I see a lot of similarities between starting running, biting the bullet, starting a business, biting the bullet, starting posting content. Like a lot of the things have been transposable, and like it's quite coincidental that around the time that I started volley was around the time that I started running as well. Prior to that, as I said on the part one of this episode, is that I probably hadn't run for about 6 months prior. And for me, like having a sense of like discipline and like the routine for that transposed so well to business. So like for me, like running has like been obviously at the core of, this conversation, but I see it so interchangeable with other facets of my life as well. One other thing that I'd just like to touch on more immediately is that like we're launching a podcast with Volley as well.
I was trying to lead you. I wasn't sure if we were keeping it quiet.
No, we can talk about it. You like just came to my mind because you're asking like me.
Yeah.
So I don't actually. So this is interesting because this actually isn't me presenting it. Like Liam will be managing it. Lily Mithen is a gun, so she's working really closely with it as well. However, the Volley team won't really be the ones sitting in front of the camera, which is a different sort of idea. The idea for Volley is to get interesting individuals in the community to interview those that are working in the charitable or non-for-profit space. And so for like if I'm a professional athlete or a high-level CEO or something like that, like I might not be motivated to go down and pick up rubbish off the beach, but I could use an hour of my time to interview someone for a non-for-profit or to interview like a volunteer that's been, working at a women's shelter for the last like 20 years or whatnot, and use my, my skills and my network to draw more attention to that cause as well. And so we've got a few really interesting ones coming up that we're hopefully recording, within the next like week or two, that we'll be publishing quite soon as well. But this is using basically creating a platform for those for people of note or people of influence to draw more attention to the causes that they're passionate about, which is quite a novel concept. Like full credit to Liam, my co-founder, who came up with the idea. But yeah, this is something that we'll be behind the scenes for, so we won't actually ever be in front of the camera. Yeah, interesting. So essentially what's going to happen is you're going to have people interview others, but like not consistent, like not the same person. So we may have a thing called a resident. And so the first guest that we're getting on, like we'll do 2 podcasts all up. The maximum will be 3, but more so it'll be like a rotating door of like, 1 week we might get a professional athlete, 1 week we might get someone from media, and the next week we might get an impact officer from Pepsi. So like it's going to constantly change about who is the host, and the guest is likely to be someone from like the cause or non-for-profit sector, and then they're able to share their story as well. So we're not sure how it's going to go. Like again, like we haven't really seen it being done before. We do have like a format that we'll be following, or like we'll give to the host to say like, hey, here are some consistent trends that you can talk about if you want to, just to try to keep some level of consistency running through them. But the idea is basically just to get the host on and then give them free reign and, the freedom of like, I guess like a tight brief in terms of like, hey, these are 6 trends or whatnot that you can sort of follow. If you run out of ideas, here's some questions, but more so than anything, just like ask the questions that you want to hear about, you want to find out about. And then to the guests, like talk about, the amazing work that you basically do for the community and how you're making the world a better place.
Mate, that's awesome. I'm going to be tuning into that one. That's for sure.
We might get you on.
Oh, huge. Get me involved. I'll run an interview or get interviewed.
Who would you, you'd be the type of person, I think you'd be the host.
Yep.
And then the idea is that
Bread and butter, mate.
you would interview a guest of a charity or a cause or, someone in the community that you're passionate about and you're passionate about, similar to Hugh. You're interested in, leveraging your following and your audience to draw more attention to this specific cause which you're passionate about. So don't have to answer it now, but keep that cooking in the back of your mind for if you see someone that pops up.
Okay.
Hit me, send me a message and we'll get you on.
I'm going to be a host of the Volley show. What's it going to be called? The Volley show?
Probably the Volley podcast.
Going to put it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, first post in how long?
Can you update my LinkedIn?
I'll help you. Yeah, I'm a bit of a LinkedIn nuffy, so.
Yeah, mine's struggling. Now, this is a running podcast, Charlie. And I'm doing content, fair bit of content at the moment about like getting new people into running. I've really found that's like my one, like that's what I'm quite good at. It's what I enjoy doing. I like making videos to get just like an everyday person who's not running into running and trying to guide them through. Let's say you got someone who you want to get into running, whether it's your mum or a friend or so on. What would you say should be their first session?
I'm glad you asked this because I was actually going to start talking about it. So I'm going to use me as the example here. My mum actually has just started going into running as well, and she's loving it. So she sends pretty regular updates to myself and Louis, which is great.
Yep, which we love.
Go Sarah.
Shout out Sarah.
But for me personally, as I said, sort of October last year, I probably hadn't ran. I'd ran maybe once for that entire year. I didn't like it. I avoided it at all cost. I would avoid cardio when I was in the gym. I was strictly a push-pull man of, get me under the bench press and do some bicep curls, and that would be my fitness. The way that I got into running was progressively, and it started off basically being forced to by Nath. So our mate Nath Freeman, ex AFL player, like has always been a massive runner, would just go for a 10K run for fun. And at the time I was like, fuck, like that's ridiculous. I don't know how anyone just does that. However, he would basically come to the gym with me and then he would say, hey, we're doing 20 minutes of cardio. We're doing like a hit session. So it'd be 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off on either the treadmill or even the bike or, the ski erg and things like that. And to be honest, it started off and I got into it through FOMO. So I think the most important thing for starting running is trying to rope in a mate or rope in 2 mates and say, hey guys, like let's try to hold each other accountable. For me, I was fortunate that Nath was, a bit fitter than me, so he would drag me along quite literally. But create a sense of accountability amongst one another, because if you're going and you're going to try to start running, it's inevitable that you're going to negotiate with yourself. Like not many people have the willpower to say, I'm going to start running today and I'm going to do it, 3 or 4 times a week for the next year. However, if you and a few mates go, hey, like, let's actually start this thing and give this thing a crack, I might wake up the next morning and I might go, oh, fuck, I don't feel like running. Like I may not run. And if I didn't have another mate that I was, I'd already planned to meet, I wouldn't go for a run. But likelihood is that Louis is going to feel pretty good about running, or at least okay. And then he's going to drag me on and we're going to go together. And then I get there, I do it, I feel fantastic. And I'm so glad that it happened. And then, the next day we might wake up and I might feel good and then Louis might feel shit. And I said, nah, mate, like you signed up for this, like let's go. So like, I think that the most important thing for starting is finding a mate, finding a few, like a group, and then just holding each other accountable. Next step, which is the most important, I would say, after you've found your running group, is just run slow. Like we would go out of the gate, and I come from, I used to play footy at a club level, like down in Old Geelong, and I'm used to that like high intensity of like running like 2Ks as fast as you can, like running 500 meters in sprints. Wasn't really used to getting into like this like long distance or medium distance running. And so like every run I did, I'd do it till I was gassed. I was sweating, I was red, I was exhausted, like all my muscles and bones would be hurting and it would take me a while to recover. It's so counterintuitive and not that beneficial to do that day in, day out. And especially when you're just starting, I would say that the most beneficial thing to do is just set a time for how long you're going to run. And it might be 10 minutes and then run it at a slow pace, as slow as you need to. so you can still keep a conversation up between the two. And even if like you're stepping not much more than a walk pace, that's completely fine. And trust me, it helps you in the long run because you do that 10 minute crawl to start, and then 2 days later or 3 days later, you're going to give it a crack for a 12 minute, and then the next one might be 15. And it's just a matter of incrementally increasing your time on the legs, and it makes running so much more enjoyable. Like I know when we were training for the marathon and whatnot, like we were pumping out paces like as quick as we possibly could every run, and like that a little bit of the ego comes into play. But this time, like when we're training now for the Melbourne Marathon, it's been so much more enjoyable just going for a run at like 5:30, 6 minute splits instead of like the past time we're doing 4:45, 5 minute every single time. And it's just exhausting. Like, you get more injured. Your recovery is slower. It's harder to get out of bed and, get up and actually do it. So I would say for me, like anyone that's looking to start, number one most important thing is find a group of mates. Number two is fucking run slow.
Yeah, slow it right down. Bring that heart rate down as well. I've found a great one for trying to get people involved, particularly like people who don't have like a sporting background or haven't played footy or anything. Like my mum, for example, is like this 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And it's a really easy thing to manipulate in that you can go 30 seconds of jogging and then 30 seconds of walking. So we'll do that for the first session. And then the next session, let's do 30 seconds of jogging, 20 seconds of walking, and slowly changing those numbers. And eventually you're going to be running for the full, 10 minutes, let's say.
And you've given my mum that same program as well, and she's been loving it as well. So I think that like, don't set the expectation that you need to, if you do set yourself say you're running for 30 minutes or you want to, do 3Ks for whatever reason, don't set yourself the stiff deadline that if I walk for a little bit, it's a failure. Like it's still so good to get out there and get the Ks under your legs. It doesn't matter if you run for the first 200 meters and then walk the rest. Like just a matter of trying to like incrementally build up that base is the most integral thing. And for me, like, when I started running with Nath, like we started those HIIT programs, which was quite similar to the 30 on 30 off, only like we were in a gym. And then from that, I started going to 1R, which was a running class, and we were doing like max like 6Ks in a session, and that was on treadmills. It was largely sprints, but then after that, we'd do like maybe like a 4K run together, and then a 5K run together, and then within the space of about 5 months, I was running a marathon. So like for me, like that's like when you say that, it seems like quite a jump, but like if you just stay disciplined and you just stay consistent, like you'll be so shocked with how far you can actually take yourself from zero. Like I would consider myself at that point, I was zero, like hadn't ran all year to you can literally go anywhere with it. So I would say that like, the third most important thing is just staying disciplined and staying consistent. Like don't expect yourself to be running, world records from the first week or the first month, but give it, 6 or 8 weeks and, running 3 or 4 times a week, and you'll be shocked with how far you can actually take it.
It's also day-to-day stuff, I find, like just being fit, like not getting tired, walking up the stairs. I think that's really important. Do you have any like specific goals with your running? I mean, obviously you want to run a marathon, then you want to run a sub 3 hour marathon and like so on. Forget about all that. Do you have, like, for example, what I'm trying to say is like one of my goals, and I've probably already achieved it, is just like being able to go for runs, like, and chatting to mates on the runs, and like just being like so fit and healthy enough that it's such a non-event, doing, let's say, a half marathon, like go with your friends and being able to talk while you do that. I had Nath Freeman on the podcast and we were kind of talking about that in terms of like, he's one of the most gifted athletes, and he's probably at like one of the most perfect levels of fitness in that he doesn't need to obsess over it, but he can still just, go out for a 10K jog with us and chat the whole time, hold pace and not have to worry about it. And then he can get on with his day and not worry about, how many calories he's eating or how much sleep he might have had. Like, do you have a goal to kind of get pretty nonchalant about it?
I would say like some like selfish goals in a way would like, I really want to tick off an ultra marathon at some point and potentially a few. So like, that's just like a personal, like achievement or accolade that I want to get to. But I think just having that base level of fitness, like I don't want it to drop off. Like now that I've, put in the time to get myself to this point, like it's something that I want to carry with me through, throughout my 20s, throughout my 30s, like when I have, a wife and kids, and I don't ever want that to drop off because it is such like a good thing to integrate into your routine. Like one, brought us together. I would consider you like one of my really good mates now. It's a great way to catch up with people, shoot the shit. Like we'll run either before or after work. Hey mate, how's your day been? Like what's on for today and so forth. And it's a really good way to keep in touch with one another. But yeah, outside of that, I've got quite fond memories of my dad, running with me when I was young, and he was super fit. So, like for reference, like my dad passed away like 4 years ago. So, being able to do that with my kids, and I guess like distill like a really healthy lifestyle throughout them as well, like it's quite important to me. Like I don't want to be, a dad that sits on the couch and, struggles to, walk up a flight of stairs and gets puffs. So for me, like I am quite, I'm quite keen to try to like instill a really healthy lifestyle in my kids, like through like running, yes, but also like through nutrition and just a wealth of things, because I think it is, so important.
Oh, it's so important. Is that something did you have a really kind of active upbringing and like healthy, active upbringing?
I would say yes. I would say not as healthy as I am now. Of course. I grew up on a farm. My mum was like a professional athlete when she was growing up. So she was skied for Australia. Dad was uncoordinated as fuck, but he was quite fit, particularly in his like older years, like around like 40s and 50s. But yeah, it was always something that I was super, super conscious of. And like I saw, like my brother's like not necessarily overly fit. Like our family, like, we could eat Maccas if we wanted to. Like we weren't overly strict on, chocolates and lollies. And I know some of my mates' families were, like, for example, and a lot of the times what happens, the kid, gets 18, like turns 18 and like they've grown up with, not being able to do this and not being able to eat that. And then they crave it and like they go like, they go all in. But for me, like, we never really had any restrictions on our food. Like I was always choose a bowl of strawberries over a bowl of chocolate from the age of about 6. So I know I was sort of always wired that way. But me personally, like I do think that, nutrition and fitness and health is like absolutely paramount to who I am. And, I would say like, other things of like my mental health as well. Like if I go like a few weeks without running or without, staying fit, like it really, really takes its toll on me upstairs. So
my dad's not like into fitness really, to be honest. Likes being fit, likes being healthy, but never gone to the gym, never been a runner, did a little bit of swimming when he was younger. And he's kind of always said like, it's so hard to get into when you're older. Like it's so hard to dedicate that time if you haven't done it your whole life, and then you get to, let's say 30, 40, 50, and you have to start dedicating an hour a day to exercise. It's like, it's such a hard jump. So the earlier you can get into it, like the better you're going to be, like the easier it is to integrate into your life. And I definitely think like that's something I want to do with my kids for sure.
100%. And so it's so important to, to get them onto it early.
Yeah, absolutely. Your dad passing away, has that like, in terms of your business career, has that kind of pushed you in any direction? Has that been a push?
Like definitely. Like I would say that like it's in a weird way probably like the best thing that could have happened to me in terms of like a personal front. Like for me, like I was sort of, I wouldn't say I was like overly challenged as a child, like and like throughout my upbringing, and like I had big ambitions for where I wanted to get to, but you have the comfort of you're both parents, and they're both working, and they're both making money or whatnot. So you can sort of like coast through and do what you want to do. But like being slapped with that quite like pretty traumatic experience when I was 20, which I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. Like causes you to have a bit of a sense check quite quickly, and a bit of a wake up call to like, fuck, you need to get your shit together. You need to, be a bit more mature. You need to look after your family. So my mum lives at home with my younger brother, Tom, who had, learning disabilities, like throughout school and whatnot. So, looking after them and like getting, myself to a point where like I'm, I guess like the man of the family in some sense, has definitely like pushed me to be more ambitious. But outside of that, like, different things of like gratitude and, love and like appreciation for life, which sounds like quite fluffy. But things that, now like I go, day to day and I wake up and like, what a good day. Like, things like that you take, you often take for granted, like the relationships, which, I do have like with my family members and with my mates. Like I say to my mates regular basis, like, I love you. Like, it's like things like that of just being like appreciative for the things that, you know, you do have that you so often take for granted when they've always been there, can quite quickly change when, you know, such a big part of your life is no longer. And like my dad, like he was my hero growing up, like he still is. Like I've got his ashes melted into a ring on my finger that goes with me everywhere. So like he like was a big part of my life. He still is. He will continue to be for like the rest of my life. But yeah, definitely pushes me more, I would say, like having that like fuel in, you know, I've got like an absolute fuel in my fire, a fuel in my fire in my belly rather, to do big things and I guess like make him proud. But yeah, I like for me, it's only been like, I guess like strength that's been added to my character with anything. Like obviously, you know, you have your immediate downs afterwards, but long term, like I would say it's like the best thing that, you know, probably could have happened to me.
I reckon I could tell in the first 3 or 4 like times meeting you, it's like some kind of adversity has happened to you just purely out of like your nature and being so caring, so loving, such like a good human. And it's funny that my dad's always said like, you know, playing footy back in the day, playing with kids who have siblings who had like learning disabilities and so on. So I think I said this to you the other day as well. So you can always tell by the other sibling that they're so stand up and like such a top individual. But yeah, mate, credit to you. Like your dad would be so fucking proud. Like I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, mate.
I love what you're doing, and yeah, you should keep going.
Nah, well, that's it. Like for me, like I see now as like the beginning. Like I'm so excited for like what's to come. Like for all the facets of my life, like, you know, I'm developing like richer and, you know, deep relationships with my mates, like my family I'm getting closer with. I feel like I'm just getting happier in all facets of life, to be honest. Like volley and like you know, the business is super exciting. Like we're at a fucking exciting point of that career. And like, I'm truly, truly ambitious of where we can get that company to. From a personal development point, like I feel like, you know, week on week, I'm leveling up in some capacity.
You love your personal development.
I love my, like,
I'm the same. Yeah.
It should be like, I don't understand why people wouldn't be. For like me, like I sort of view life as like a video game. Like, you know, if you go into a video game, you know, you pick the main character and you're trying to, you know, level them up as much as you possibly can. Like you're not just sitting there and observing, like, you know, you're doing the quests, you're doing the things that are going to make them better. You're literally trying to level them up. And I don't understand why people would play, you know, their game of life in sort of a secondary role. Like everyone should be viewing themselves as, you know, the main character in some capacity and trying to take it as far as they possibly can. So for me, like, you know, I feel like I've got a long way to go. Like I've come a long way, but I'm super excited.
What's happiness look like for you?
This is a good question. I've heard some good analogies of this before. Like I would just say being, you know, content for where you are and content for where you're going. There's a really good quote that I heard on happiness recently, which is there's 3 different areas of life. I think there's happiness. I think this is an Aman Gardzi quote. There's happiness, joy, and the other one was something like growth. And they're all different to one another. So like maybe it wasn't growth, the third one, but we're going to run with it anyway. So like when you're happy, when you're in a place of joy and when you're in a place of growth, they're all somewhat perceived as like positive experiences, but they're all vastly different to one another. So growth is obviously you're being challenged, you know, you're getting outside of your comfort zone, you're moving forward and you're seeing that evolution. Joy is a place of, you know, I would say like sitting still, of like, you know, sitting on the beach, being with friends that you like not overly, you know, you're not overly challenged, like you're not moving forward, like you're not progressing anything. And then happiness is just a place of like, I would say like contentness with that as well. Or like contentness of where, you know, you're not necessarily, you know, growing, but you're not, you know, you're not staying still either. And I think that like it's quite a big, like it's quite an ambitious sort, like it's quite an ambiguous sort of statement. But for me, like, you know, I think it just comes down to like being content of like where I am personally, where I am with my relationships, like where I am with my business, and then also like having, you know, sight to improve them as well. Like I think that once, you know, knowing that there's more to get in life, I think makes me happy and like makes me excited. Like I think that if I ever plateaued in any capacity, like I'll naturally become accustomed to that, and then all of a sudden it wouldn't seem so special. So like I think that always like constantly being able to grow is my like epitome of happiness.
Content for where you are and content for where you're going. I find that it's such a hard one because I'm so happy right now. Like personally, so happy with everything I've got. I'm so excited for what's to come. But I find like my excitement for what's to come almost clouds my being like contentness for who I am right
present,
now.
yeah.
Present self. Do you have any acts, like anything you're doing specifically to really be so like in the present?
I think just like acts of gratitude is the main one there, and it's quite sort of like woo-woo and like in terms of like gratitude, but it's been something that's been practiced for, you know, since the dawn of man, of like, you know, just being appreciative of what you do have, and like little notions of like, you know, small things of saying, you know, thanks to your mate for calling you out of the blue, of, you know, telling your friends that you love them, telling your mum that you love them, and just like taking like a step back and acknowledging, you know, what, you know, your life actually is. And all of a sudden if you start, you know, listing off of like, hey, like, you know, I have a job, like I have a car, I have, you know, a good girlfriend potentially, like not like what, you know, Louis has or what this person has or what my other mate has, of just like looking at your own life and going like, shit, like it's actually, you know, it's pretty awesome. Like I'm a massive like optimist in terms of like life. I think that it's like, you know, it's an amazing thing in terms of, you know, even raw odds of like the chances of you being born are something like 1 in 400 trillion or something like that. So the chances of, you know, you actually as an individual ever, you know, coming onto this face of earth is so preposterously, you know, small. Like you've defied all odds to get here. It's a genuine miracle. You know, you may as well, you know, I think it's, you know, at the very least, you should be making the most of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, I feel like we've gotten like right into the depths of it in the latter stages.
Is that what you wanted?
And I love it. Yeah, it's great. It's like podcasting's a funny one in that it's like you gotta stick with it for so long until often you find like the diamonds. I'm not saying earlier in the episode it wasn't great, but I've loved our chat today, and like we've eaten up a fair bit of time, mate.
What time's that?
Oh, we'd be, what are we, 50 minutes into this episode and
Shit.
an hour on the last one?
That's flown.
I know, there you go. So if time flies, doesn't it?
It does. When you're having fun.
Do you have anything you wish I asked you?
Nothing that I wish you asked me. Like I think we covered off a lot there. One thing that I would like to ask you is, with your level of contentness at the moment, what are the things that you think you're most excited for?
Oh, it's a great question. I think like as in like in the years to come, or like what am I excited for in regards to like where I am right now?
Yeah, where you are right now. Like what gets you up out of bed in the morning and things like that. Because like you subjectively have, in a lot of people's eyes, in like my eyes, like you've like made it.
Oh, mate, don't feel
like in terms of like a lot of metrics of like, you know, you're working with some of the brands that I'm sure that you would have dreamed of as a kid. Like you've got a big following. You've got a good group of mates around you. Like where you're at now is like a lot of people's like dream. Like how do you stay, I guess, like motivated and not just like take the foot off the accelerator? Because like once you do get to a certain point that you can, you know, you can sort of coast through on, you know, on a reasonable salary and, you know, hop from brand deal to brand deal and, you know, I guess like coast through life. Like how do you keep that like drive, and like what gets you wanting to move forward? Like what gets you out of bed? It's
probably been the biggest lesson this year in regards to especially the salary thing. Like I'm very thankful I'm earning kind of more money than I thought I ever would, to be honest. And I'm super thankful for that. But the dragon just keeps going. I feel like I'm nowhere near like the amount of money that I need to earn to, you know, set my life up or to so on. And like, I'm so much further ahead than I ever thought I would be. Granted, I probably had really low expectations for myself, so don't think anything too crazy of me. But what like motivates me and gets me out of bed, firstly, it's helping others. So, you know, I'd say weekly I get a message from someone, probably almost daily, of saying, like, at least I've helped them in their life in regards to fitness, or even bigger, I've saved their life. And it's like, well, this shit is so much bigger than me. What I do is so much bigger than like being an influencer, getting a few likes and a few followers. Like it's literally impacting people's lives, whether you like it or not. So I got to keep going. That's the first thing. Secondly, relationships in regards to friends, relationships in regards to my family, and relationships in regards to, you know, girls, or a particular girl for me. And like,
hey.
Oh, hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, but, so like, I guess those things get me out, but I've noticed more and more, mate, it's like it's spending time with individuals. And like I've found the more money I can earn and the more successful I can be, the more time I get with the people that I love. So like that's purely what it is. And, you know, you look at a Saturday, like for me, I love going out for a beer, love having a crack on a night out, but like I more so love spending time with the people that I'm having a beer with and stuff. And I think that's consistent for most people. But yeah, it's all like for me personally and like where I'm most content, it's spending time with someone. And then, yeah, to be honest, like I get it might just be my age, but like I'm super excited to build an empire, to build a family, to build relationship. And that's probably what gets me out of bed mostly.
Unreal. And the first point that you touched on as well was like a net positive of like impacting people's lives. I think like I was quite surprised with that when I first started speaking to you, of the amount of people that were, you know, reaching out and saying, hey mate, like you've changed, or, you know, saved my life. Like that is like an absolutely beautiful thing, man. So like being able to continue to do that, like I can definitely see like why it keeps you going.
Yeah, and you'll see it as well with Volley and hopefully content as well when you keep building on the content.
We'll see.
Mate, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a fun and rewarding podcast, to be honest. So hopefully we've still got people listening on because, yeah, this has been awesome.
It's been a good one, mate. Thank you. Love you lots.
Love you, mate.